The SEC is back to deliver renewable, more affordable, reliable energy. We're investing in wind, solar, and storage, and supporting Victorian homes to switch to electric, helping reduce energy bills, drive down emissions, and create jobs. It's renewable energy, powering Victoria for Victorians. Authorised by the Victorian Government, Melbourne.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest in the Power Up series, Why Heat Pump Hot Water Systems Are the Way to Go. My name's Ruchika Diora, and I'm the General Manager of Consumer Energy Solutions here at the SEC. And thanks for joining us, whether you're watching live or catching us later on the website. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their unique ability to care for country and their deep spiritual connection to it. I'd also like to extend that respect to traditional owners across Victoria and on the land from which anyone is joining us. These information series are focused on supporting Victorians to switch to electric at home. Each session, we're joined by experts in the sector to provide practical advice about going electric and how to save money on your energy bills. If you haven't watched our first two sessions yet, you can catch up by watching them on our website on the How to Go Electric page at secvictoria.com.au. The purpose of this session is heat pump hot water systems. It's an area that we're actually really excited about at the SEC because hot water systems are about 20% of your household energy use and the most energy intensive appliance in your home. Households can save a lot on your energy bills by making sure that you've got an efficient hot water system, and that's where heat pump hot water systems come in. Today, we're going to talk about how a heat pump works, how to get the right system for your unique needs, and how to access any available rebates through the government. I'm really excited to be joined by Merrily Hunter here. She's the founder and CEO of Mac Trade Services, one of our SEC-endorsed installers. Mac Trade Services is a holistic energy management business that provides training, consultant, and trade-based services, electrification upgrades to homes and businesses. They upgrade more than 5,000 homes and businesses each year with energy-saving appliances. And together, the team has delivered more than 8 million gigajoules of energy savings to the grid in the past decade. That's the carbon equivalent of planting more than 26 million trees. Merrily also serves as the president of the Energy Efficiency Council, advocating for energy policy and energy asset retrofit programs throughout Australia. Thanks for joining me, Merrily. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm going to hand it over to Merrily in just a moment, who's going to talk more about heat pumps and how they work, and then we'll open it up for questions. You can submit your questions using Slido, the QR code's on your screen, or you can go to Slido, slido.com, and enter event code SEC2025. Our team will consolidate the questions, and we'll aim to get through as many of them as possible. So Merrily, over to you.
Okay. So heat pump hot water systems, we've all got them in our homes, obviously. In my house, I've got a family of 4, and hot water is commonly used for showers that go way too long in most cases, and a whole lot of laundry that's taking place there. In fact, about 60% of our usage just goes in laundry and in showering and bathing. A heat pump is the most efficient form of heating and cooling your hot water in the home today with the technologies that we have today. This is a fast being adopted activity throughout Victoria and throughout South Australia and New South Wales. That has a lot to do with the subsidies that are readily available today, but also the knowledge of what gas means in burning that within the home and trying to adapt households to become a single fuel source. By that, we mean electrifying the household by switching off gas, whether that's for cooking or whether that's for your hot water. It means that you only have one bill coming into the home, but it also means that you can start generating your own energy through solar and effectively become energy independent. So what is a heat pump? You actually probably already have a heat pump in your home today. If you have a fridge and if you have a split system air conditioner, that they are other forms of heat pumps. They just work in reverse to your fridge. What a heat pump does is it draws in the heat from the air around it and uses that to transfer heat within the tank, in my very untechnical language, as opposed to using an heating element that like an electric resistance heat tank, and as opposed to burning gas to heat the liquid that you need. It's that movement of energy in the different way to heat water that makes it so energy efficient. Within a household, as Chica mentioned before, hot water typically comprises about 20 to 30% of your energy bill. Switching from an electric resistance heater over to something like a heat pump can save up to 70% of your energy costs purely by switching to a different technology. There are some things that will be different in the way that you use your hot water system, and some things that you would notice by switching over to a heat pump. Those that are switching over from instantaneous to a tank will notice that they need to be more mindful of how much water they're using at any given time and make sure that they're sizing their systems properly for the size of the household that it needs to service. Those that are switching over from electric resistance tanks, they might be mindful of if you're switching over from an electric resistance over to a heat pump, if you have solar within the home, you want to be more mindful of the kind of timers that you can actually set so that you're optimizing the use of the solar that you're generating on your site, and also avoiding periods of peak pricing and peak consumption. I think that's heat pumps in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's really great. I appreciate you mentioning the solar piece. With so many people putting solar on their roofs these days, heat pumps are generally more efficient ways of heating your hot water. But if you also have solar, you can really optimize the value that you're creating for yourself by self-consuming.
Yes,
during
definitely.
the day. Yeah.
And a lot of the heat pumps that are coming out today actually have timers inbuilt in them, and they also come with their own apps as well. So you can actually sync those in depending on what state that you're in and the renewables rate that you've actually got generating into that grid. You can optimize your heat pump so that it's using solar at the cheapest times. Yeah. And you want to be avoiding those periods, those shoulder periods, when you're not actually generating your own energy.
Yeah, and that's great because if you're a person of two people in the house or 4 people in the house, or if you've got people constantly showering because you've got a different schedule, you're in control of when you can make sure your heat pump has hot water.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I think the most common question that I get on the hot water space is if you've got something like an instantaneous hot water system there. Now, instantaneous, for those who don't understand it, they're the little white boxes that sit on the side of your house. They're not the big tanks that you have that are ground mounted. So an instantaneous hot water system, they're quite prevalent. Most people will have seen them, or if not have them on their own home. And these things, they last forever. So if you're waiting for that to retire before you invest in a heat pump, you'll be waiting to 2050. Gosh, it'll be powered by nuclear by then probably. If you're waiting till 2050 for it to retire. So you really need to make the case for the economics of switching over, and not just the emissions component, the emission footprint of switching over to gas, but actually doing the cost stack of that. And the rebates that are available today, depending on what state you're in, can knock off almost about 70% of the supply and install costs of switching from gas or an electric resistance tank over to a heat pump unit. So there are a lot of tools that are available to help people afford that change. And in addition to those rebates, you're also able to access green finances like Bright Finance or Plenty Finance. These are companies that provide loans to be able to provide that bridging piece for electrification in the home. So you're not left to come up with the money yourself to do these changeovers and to do the transitions in your home. There are a lot of products available to help you on that journey.
Yeah, it's a great point. Here in Victoria, we've got the Solar Vic rebates, we've got VECs or VEU rebates, and then depending on, again, your circumstances, there are some others that you can stack on top of that.
Yeah.
And
STCs,
STCs, absolutely. So there's quite a bit of government incentive and support in those areas. And then if there is something that you need to bridge, there's additional options, like you said, Bright and Plenty, and some of the larger banks also are actually starting to offer this. So it's good to do your due diligence and find a financial institution that might be able to support you if you need
Definitely.
that. Yeah.
I think that's something that's been a surprise for a lot of people in approaching their bank. If you have a mortgage, if you're lucky enough to own your own home and you manage to have a mortgage, have a chat with your existing banking provider and ask if they actually have a lower interest rate green loan that you can attach to your mortgage. Commonly, these are running at about 3% interest rates, and you're able to purchase things like solar, batteries, your heat pump, your air conditioner, and be able to fund that through your mortgage, through your existing banking facility, and switch your home today. There are a lot of barriers that have been removed that weren't originally in place 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I might just ask, what are some of the things that it would be really helpful for consumers to just right off the bat ask their installer if they've got someone out coming and helping them choose a heat pump?
That's a really good question. I think that it's quite a difficult place for people to navigate in finding a provider that's out there that's willing to do a heat pump changeover. And we can't get past the elephant in the room here that 15 years ago, the heat pumps that were out in the market were notorious for being noisy. They needed a lot more installation considerations about clearances, and plumbers back then that were putting in those heat pumps were plagued with complaints and commonly having to pull out those systems. So don't be surprised if you do have a plumber that comes along and says, don't do a heat pump. The good news is that the technology advancements today mean that the noise that a lot of the heat pumps are creating are no noisier than a split system that you have in your home or your refrigerator firing up and running. The noises come down. Clearances obviously are still an important part of this, particularly with houses having less clearance on their sides and neighbours or neighbouring properties being built closer and closer together. So that is also a consideration there. But when you have a plumber that comes and talks to you, you will have a bit of a split down the middle between plumbers that are pro heat pump and those that aren't necessarily on board with the technology. And from my experience, those that aren't necessarily on board with the technology, it has to do with previous experience and valid experiences at that. The technology today, though, and the models that are out there are far superior to what was on the market a good decade ago, though, so it's worth doing your research and finding that. Now, in order to access the rebates, you can't go to just any installer. You do need to consider, first of all, first port of call, I would say, is if you have a trusted plumber that you like working with, that would be the first call that you make. Go and ask them about the heat pumps that are available and about your home circumstances, and ask them if they have access to the subsidies or they work with a provider that can help them claim the subsidy on your behalf and apply it as a discount to your heat pump quote. If they don't have access to it, you can ask them to recommend someone, or you can go onto the VEU registry and find accredited providers that are operating in Victoria by typing in activity providers and then heat pump or hot water system as the activity. There are also useful tools online. If you go onto the Facebook My Efficient Electric Home page, there is a wealth of information there and a very engaged community that are willing to help you navigate this space, from system recommendations and also talking through the different installers that are available and how to go about contacting.
You know, we wanted to actually talk a little bit about acknowledging how complex that this can be for people in general. I mean, we all have homes, family, jobs, et cetera. And so switching to electric we understand it can really seem complex and overwhelming. And there's a lot of information out there, as you were saying, Merrily. That's why the SEC is developing a one-stop shop for consumers to come directly to us, get access to all of the information. All of the installers that we endorse are actually from that list that you referenced off of the Victorian government website. You can be assured that they have access to all of the rebates and that they are providing you with quality and objective advice. We've also connected residents in specific LGAs with those endorsed installers directly. And we're wanting to really understand how consumers want to engage with those installers, what kind of questions they're asking, so that we can ensure that it's as seamless a process as possible. If you're interested in checking that tool out and seeing what else you can learn about going electric in your home, including how to learn more about heat pump hot water systems, you can just visit our website at, again, secvictoria.com.au and go to the household section, and you'll be taken to our tool. I might switch over to some Q&A right now, and I wanted to start off right off the bat by talking about not only a really large segment of household consumers, but a segment that's rising, and that's renters, people that aren't necessarily what you would call empowered to make this switch right off the bat. What can you tell us about how renters might be able to address getting off of gas and specifically looking at hot water systems?
I think that this is a common dilemma with paralysis for people that are wanting to electrify and wanting to have an impact in their home and on their carbon footprint. There are a lot of renters out there. I am a renter as well, and we have a gas instantaneous hot water system at our house, and I can't tell you how difficult that is working in the energy efficiency sector and understanding the savings that can be created and still having a gas instantaneous hot water system at home. Now, what we have done, because we can see the benefits, we've actually done the calculations ourselves, post rebates, what it would cost us to switch over to a heat pump. And to be transparent with you there, for us to switch our gas system over to a heat pump after subsidies, we're talking about an out-of-pocket of about $2,000. Because we're a renter, we're not going to own that hot water system, but we also don't have a landlord that's necessarily receptive to switching out something that's already working and functioning just fine. They don't have the same draw card as us or incentive in place to want to switch off. So what we have done with them as part of our lease renewal agreement is we've actually said, we'll go for you 50-50 on this, and calculated the running costs of maintaining our gas system versus switching over to a heat pump. Our return on investment is about 15 months. So it calculated it out to about 67 weeks that it's going to take for that system to pay for itself by splitting the cost 50-50 with the landlord. Now, what the landlord gets then is a new asset within their home. They've got a sticky tenant because now we're actually the beneficiaries of an energy-saving appliance within that home. And we're renters, so we feel that we're now empowered to make those asset-based decisions. Now, if we didn't have the available cash to be able to come up with that straight away, to be able to input our share of that, we can also access those green financiers that I mentioned before that tend to run at a low interest rate and are being made readily available for things like heat pumps in the home. And so there are a lot of gaps but there are a lot of opportunities to bridge those gaps that exist today. We recommend reaching out to your landlords and having those discussions, but also negotiating with them about how that could tie into a lease, whether that could be a rental increase to pay for the asset over time, or a rental decrease if you're prepared to bridge that gap yourself through your own means and through negotiating the myriad of rebates that are readily available. So I recommend you jump onto the SEC page and start doing the research on there rather than ruling it out because you're a renter.
Yeah, it's great advice, especially now that more and more people are renting. It's one way to take some agency over your energy costs in that regard. There's some great questions coming through. I mean, I think the one that's really interesting and I've heard a lot about is, how do heat pump hot water systems perform in colder climates?
It's a valid one that comes up quite a lot. What I can say is that there was a huge hot water changeover program that ran throughout the UK, and it was switching out boilers to heat pumps. Now, obviously, heat pumps are drawing heat from the air, but what I can say in Australia, they actually work really well. There are other environments where you might want to question, but we're talking about some serious extreme weather environments, not the ones that you would actually see in Australia. But heat pumps work just fine in cool climates as they do in more temperate climates.
Yeah, I think the other thing, without getting too technical, is just making sure that people know that there's a refrigerant. It's not like water that they're trying to just purely convert. So there's a refrigerant in the appliance that is heats and cools at an entirely different temperature than water or whatnot. So it's really able to be efficient in cold
exactly.
weather.
Actually, there is an animation that we've got readily available that shows you how the technology works that we can play.
So how does a heat pump work? By moving heat rather than creating it, heat pumps are significantly more efficient than typical electric hot water systems. The heat pump works first by pulling the warmth from the air. Then the warm air is compressed, increasing the temperature. Then the heat is transferred to the water in the tank.
A couple of questions around optimizing the heat pump so that it can work smartly with solar panel systems. So, only heating when there's excess solar, either through their own generation, or now we're starting to see a lot of people have solar on their roofs. So there's actually a lot of excess generation in the middle of the day. How do people get the most out of their heat pump with respect to that timing issue that you mentioned?
Depends on the heat pump that they've got. A lot of the heat pumps that are being installed today come with timer switches. And if you do have solar panels there, when you're there having it installed, you can actually talk with your installer about connecting and syncing that up and connecting the timer so that it's actually being used during the time that you're generating the most amount of energy in the home. There are also new tech that's coming on today, which is about virtual power plant and orchestration with demand response within your heat pump as well, and being able to feed that into virtual power plants and people receiving incentives for signing up not just their battery to be able to use as a stored energy device, but also their heat pump as well. So the smarts that are coming out in the heat pump technology today is designed for people to optimize the use of that and to also maximize the use of an electrified home. So if you do have solar and you've got your heat pump there, you've got multiple assets in the home that you're storing energy within, and being able to optimize at times that it's the cheapest to use them.
It's a great point, because I think one of the ways to think about a heat pump hot water system is as a thermal battery, right? So you don't have to shell out for an expensive home battery if you've got a heat pump and you've got solar. Just having that conversation with the installer at the time of installation, or as you mentioned, there might be an app that you can log on to and just check to see when the heat pump is actually heating your water. And if you have that heat pump heat your water in the middle of the day from like 10 to 2 when the sun is shining, particularly if you have solar, you'll be optimizing for that generation. And that's effectively what a battery is doing, right? You're storing energy. That's right. That's great. So let's see. Oh, here's one. My current hot water system is a rooftop solar system installed in 2011. Gas boosted in the cooler months. Is there a way to replace a gas booster with an electric booster?
It's not a simple switch out, unfortunately. You will have to engage. It sounds like it should be an easy way to switch it out, but it's actually not. And you'll have to have a chat with an installer about a full replacement on that one. So I really would run the numbers before making that switch. As much as I'm all about getting off gas and having a single fuel for your home to operate on, it's not going to be as simple as just switching the booster over. That's something that you'll need to talk with your installer about.
I think that just exemplifies the fact that there isn't one solution for everybody, and that, you need to make this decision based on your lifestyle, based on your requirements, and at the time that's right for you. So I think what you're looking at is, if something goes wrong with that system, you want to move over to a more efficient system, or a system that has less emissions. Whatever the driver is for you, just be ready with the information when that happens, and can come to the SEC website or a myriad of other websites and check out what information might help you make that decision. What are my options if I don't have space for an outside heat pump? And what are the restrictions on where they can be located? Can we put it in our garage?
No, you can't put it in your garage.
All right.
You shouldn't be putting them in enclosed spaces, really, for a heat pump. You've got to remember that it is actually blowing out air at the same time.
Right.
So while it might be putting air in, it's also blowing it out as well. So this is a common dilemma, particularly in an environment where you have more and more houses that are being built side to side, and there's not as much space between the fence line and the side of your property. So it does cause problems. If you do not have the clearance available that's running down the side of your house in order to have a tank, and depending on the size of the household that you have, you're going to have to get quite a sizable tank if you've got quite a large family there, and it can take up quite a substantial amount of space on the side of your house. So in those instances, our advice would be consider other options and other technologies that are available, such as solar hot water systems that you've heard about before that go on the roof, and also having an electric instantaneous hot water system that you can connect up to solar. Obviously, these aren't as energy efficient as a heat pump, but when you don't have the space that's available on the side of your home and you are looking to get off gas and switch to a more efficient form of hot water system, they're the kinds of technologies that would be available for you when you're space limited.
Yeah, horses for courses, right? I mean, I think we've got, depending on your needs, depending on your circumstance, there'll be a solution for you. I think we've got time for like one more question. And this is a really good one. I really love this one. Is what is the life expectancy of a heat pump hot water system?
So a lot of the heat pump hot water systems that you're seeing today, particularly run under the subsidy-based programs, have about a 5-year on the tank. They should, in outside of schemes and in programs that, in the more broader market of heat pump hot water systems, the tanks that you should be coming across should be about 10 years. But under the subsidy-based programs, what you're seeing is a requirement that they have a minimum of 5 years for those systems there. I understand that's under review at the moment and is likely to be extended, which is fantastic. But at the moment, you should expect that to be at least 5 years.
Yes. So that's great. It gives insight into how to calculate your payback period, your return on investment, and what you can expect over time. Time for one more quick one, because that was a quick one. So how do you determine what kind of heat pump hot water system is right for you? I mean, you mentioned things like size of family. I've heard things like how long is your hair, because that determines how long your shower is in terms of, is it number of bathrooms? What's your advice there?
There's a broad range of heat pumps that are on the market today. I mean, you've got your Temus up to your Pradas of heat pumps that are there. So there are a lot of really good mid-range heat pumps that are out there. What you really should be looking for is a recommendation from your installer. You should be looking for a tank that's the right size for your household and for your household needs. One of the things that I like to review when I'm geeking over the data of heat pumps is recovery rates. Heat recovery rates is how long does it take once your tank is empty or completely filled up again to become hot again. So in the most simplest terms, your heat recovery time in there. And there is a big difference between the systems that'll recover within a period of about 4 to 6 hours and those that might take double that time frame to do there. So you want to be sticking to those systems that have a full heat recovery period of with under 6 hours, getting the right tank size, and then also picking what system suits your budget and what's got the longest warranties and what your installer is really recommending for you as well.
I think one of the lessons there is just don't be afraid to ask questions of your installer and be like, hey, I've got a household of 3 teenagers and they take like long showers versus it's just me and my partner. Yeah, and, we don't take long showers. Maybe we cook a lot. Do we entertain? These are questions that I think it's perfectly natural to ask your installer.
Definitely.
So that they can help right-size this for you.
Exactly.
And future-proof a little bit as well. Right?
And getting onto the My Efficient Electric Home page again, Absolutely. Because as I said, it's a community group there that people are talking and sharing what their experiences have been, what systems have worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And there are sizing guides that are available as well that are telling you what size appropriate for your household needs, and always size up. Yeah. If you're thinking that you're a household of 2, but you actually have a lot of guests that come over and stay at your property, or you do a lot of laundry at your property, these are the things that you need to consider. As I mentioned before, within a household, 60% of your consumption is showering and laundry. So when you're looking at that with your hot water needs, do a quick calculation on that when you're trying to work out what size system is going to be right for your household.
Thanks a lot, Merrily. And thanks everyone who's tuned in to watch. Our next topic is going to be on heating and cooling. And you can register your interest to join our next session, again, on the website. We'll send you the details of the email using the email that you register with. And a reminder, if you haven't done so already, you can visit our website for energy tips and guidance all the way from low cost, low investment through to I'm actually doing a renovation or I'm ready to go full electric. We've got advice that fits where you are in your journey. And that's at secvictoria.com.au. We look forward to working together to help accelerate Victoria's energy transition, and thanks again for tuning in.